Hello.
Hey, Deborah.
Can someone talk for me?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yep.
Deborah. This is
Okay.
Ann. I hear you.
What are
Thank
you going to
you.
do?
Well,
What are you going to do about the public comments? We going to read them all 32 of them, or what?
no, I think we'll limit it to 5 each. Is that, let me see. We could limit it a little bit more, I suppose.
Well, last 5 or 6 on my screen don't
Yeah.
word wrap, so those are kind of unreadable.
Yeah. How about if we do 4 each, that would get us to potentially an hour of
That's-
public comment.
I think that's fair.
Really, they all say pretty much the same thing. So, if there were one near the bottom that had any different message, but I didn't see any that had a different message.
Right. Well, okay.
As far as I could read, they're negative. They don't want us to do it. There's, I think
I think
they're
we're
all
live,
that.
by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think 4 each would be in keeping with prior tradition, such as it is during COVID. And once again, put a note on, for us to establish some kind of policy about this. So,
And they'll
I
all
think
they'll all be posted publicly as well, right? So
right.
so the public will have access to all of them.
I can't tell if everybody's here. Wait. Karen's here. Okay. I think everyone's here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this regular business meeting of the Edmonds School District Board of Directors for December 8th, 2020 is now called to order. I lost okay. So first we have our land acknowledgement. Dr. Balderas, would you administer the land acknowledgement?
Love to. Thank you, Board of Directors. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Salish people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes, who since time immemorial have taken care of, hunted, fished, and gathered on these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. By acknowledging these homelands, we commit to working with tribal nations to further the education aims they have identified for our classrooms and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the
and to
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the school board minutes for November 17th and November 24th, 2020?
I move
I
to
mo-
approve.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for November 17th and November 24th, 2020. Is there any discussion?
President Kilgore, can we look at the approval of the agenda? I'd like to make a motion to, or a suggestion that we move an agenda item up, if possible.
Okay, right. Yeah, that went past us. I apologize. Let me just finish the minutes and then we'll go back. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes for November 17th and November 24th, 2020, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. And I apologize. I had this on my handwritten notes, but I was so busy looking at the screen. Yes, the proposal is to move, this is the Housing Hope discussion. Is that right?
Yes, President Kilgore.
Okay, the proposal is to move the Housing Hope discussion topic up to just after the consent agenda. So that the gentlemen who are visiting us don't have to stay here all night. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
This is Ann, so moved.
Second, this is Karen.
The agenda, there's been a motion to amend tonight's agenda to move the item, the discussion about Housing Hope up to following our consent agenda. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor of amending the agenda as discussed, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Okay. Next, we have our public comments, and we have many comments, all on the topic of a potential kindergarten hub. Because we are short on time, as we have done in the past, we will read a selection of the comments. I'll start, we'll each read about 4 each, and that should I believe that would definitely represent the flavor of the comments tonight. So the first comment comes from Elizabeth Erickson. I urge the district leaders to reconsider the plan of a kindergarten hub for Westgate and Sherwood Elementary. As a parent with a second grader this year and 2 younger children, it would be a great disservice to us to not have the younger ones start their elementary years in the same building as their older siblings. Young children need stability, and having to start in a new building 2 years in a row for K and first would not help to provide this for the students in our district. Additionally, I'm on the PSO board for Westgate, and I feel this would hurt our ability to create community for our families. The kindergarten year provides families many opportunities to get involved with the school community, and separating them from to their own school would remove them from this during this crucial year. I really hope the district will seriously consider taking into account the concerns of our kindergarten staff as well as families before pushing the decision through. The next comment comes from Deborah Ridgway. I just learned that our district has decided to move forward with a kindergarten hub, moving Westgate and Sherwood kindergartners to the former Woodway campus. I've had 3 children attend school in your district. This past year, I have found myself asking several times, what is going on at the ESC? Here I am again, scratching my head. My understanding is the kindergarten teachers from the affected schools found out about this at last week's board meeting. Out of respect for professionals in their field, could you not have given them a heads up? My opinion is our district is way too large. I wish we were a smaller district so we can make decisions that best suits our children and not our very large district. I feel like having a kindergarten hub would just contribute to more poor decisions affecting our kids in a negative way. I understand how a hub would help with the growing numbers. I also see how this would create a huge void in our local elementary schools. As a very involved parent, I've watched older elementary students comfort kindergarten siblings at drop-off. I've observed nervous first graders warmly greeted by their former kindergarten teacher. I've even seen kindergarten teachers welcome students in their classrooms at the end of the day when working parents are late to pick up their kids. The teachers are amazing, wearing so many hats in our schools. Not only are they amazing in the classrooms, they are the ones I constantly see at school functions when they aren't on the clock. They establish relationships with parents, and the relationships continue for the next 6 years. I honestly think strong kindergarten teachers improve parent involvement for many years to follow. I can't imagine losing those critical relationships. I hope our district thinks this decision through and considers children and their families first. The next comment comes from Erica Elder. Not only was I shocked to learn that Westgate and Sherwood's kindergarten classes might be relocated to a different location, but I was very shocked and appalled to hear that our district's kindergarten teachers learned about this move in the same way that I learned about it, via the public agenda. That seems very sneaky and calculating to me. Our teachers deserve more respect than they were shown. To move the kinder classes away from the neighborhood schools would be a huge disservice to their parents, schools, and especially the kids. Our schools do an amazing job of supporting these new 4, 5, and 6-year-olds in their first year of school. The teachers and kids rely heavily on the help of the older students, helping them to their buses. Oh gosh, I apologize. Reading buddies and so forth. The way that older students help out with the kinder is so important for both age groups. The kinders get to know older students and become lifelong friends. The older students learn a sense of responsibility in helping their younger peers. A big part of kindergarten is getting these young kiddos acclimated to an overwhelming new environment. Once they get to first grade, they've got the hang of how everything works in their school. To take them away from this crucial first year of school and plunk them away from everyone else would be a huge disservice to the children. And the next comment comes from Andrea Statoulis, and I apologize if I've scrambled that. I request that the district involve the community and parents in a conversation regarding the housing of all kindergarten students separately from their home school. As a pediatric occupational therapist in the area and a mother of 2 at Westgate Elementary, I would like to have a say and have some of my concerns addressed. It is highly undesirable for kindergarten students to have to essentially transition 3 times between pre-K, K, and then grade school within this new proposal of the kindergarten hub. Transitions should absolutely be minimized for these young students. They should be engaging in the classrooms and extracurricular periods, library, music, PE, art, and teachers that they will be developing a routine, expectations, and above all, a security and bond with during the next several years. The hub doesn't meet the needs of the community, keeping siblings together and offering the least restrictive environment for our kids. I'm concerned many families will leave the public school system in an attempt to best support their children and avoid unnecessary transitioning for essentially 3 years in a row. I recommend reaching out to the parents in the district to inquire on how this will impact our families and community. Thank you for your time. And now I will pass the baton. Who would like to take it?
I'm happy to take it, Deborah.
Thank you, Director Kadam.
So the next comment is from Catherine Bartel. She says, I recently found out that the district has developed a plan to move the kindergarten programs from Westgate and Sherwood elementary schools to the Woodway Elementary site to create a kindergarten hub. As someone who lives within the boundaries of Westgate Elementary and teaches for Edmonds School District, why is this the first time I am hearing of this? Why was the community and teachers not included in this discussion? What happens after the 21-22 school year when another school will need to be moved to the site because of a rebuild? Why are we not discussing opening up Woodway Elementary to grades K-6 to alleviate crowding to both schools? I'm frustrated for my fellow teachers. They will be relocated after teaching online for a year during a pandemic. Teachers need stability. They need normal. Kids need normal. Normal is being at a school your older sibling is at, being able to ride the bus with them your first year of school so you feel safe. Please think before you make a decision. A hasty, quick decision could really hurt relationships with the community and teachers. Thank you. The next one is from the Westgate Kindergarten. Here we go. The kindergarten teachers at Westgate Elementary would like to address the board in response to the district's recommendation to relocate the kindergarten program at Westgate and Sherwood to the former Woodway Elementary School site. We respectfully request the board to demand the district's due diligence in seeking input from all parties impacted by such a decision. The kindergarten teachers at Westgate and Sherwood became aware of the district's recommendation by reading the public agenda for tonight's board meeting. It is disheartening that we learned about the proposal in this way and not directly from our district's leadership team. Those of us who have been members of the kindergarten advisory team for a number of years can attest that this is the first that our colleagues have heard such a proposal. We are profoundly disappointed in our leaders' complete lack of transparency when crafting this recommendation, as it does not follow our district's agreed upon decision-making process. Our district leaders must solicit feedback from parents and staff before making a recommendation to the board for consideration. We all realize that space is an issue, but our district leaders must consider and present multiple options to ease overcrowding at the impacted school sites, including but not limited to moving sixth graders to middle school and redrawing the boundaries of the original K-6 Woodway Elementary campus. It is unfair to compare the proposed kindergarten hub to the thoughtfully built complex that Mukilteo School District designed specifically for providing invaluable opportunities to their youngest learners. Drawing upon our many years of expertise as kindergarten teachers, we believe that the transitional year of kindergarten is incredibly difficult for many children. To require our youngest students to make a transition to a kindergarten campus and then again to an elementary campus defeat all of the comforts that come with attending the neighborhood school, the excitement of being with older siblings, and cross-age group learning opportunities from older role models. We will lose a strong sense of community at a campus that is designed for 9 months of instruction. With families coming and going through a revolving door, it will be difficult to build a strong parent-teacher organization, which will directly impact the quality of the educational experience. It is imperative that our district leaders loop in the Edmonds Education Association, teachers, and community members to solicit feedback through a transparent process before getting this far in the decision-making process. Thank you from the Westgate Elementary Kindergarten team. The next comment is from Jason Warren. It's on the same topic. Please don't put kindergarten classes at a different school. This is detrimental to the young kids. Spend the money and make Westgate and Sherwood schools new, bigger, and better than the old, musty junk that they are. You spend the money on other elementary schools, why not on those two schools? And the last comment that I'll be reading is from Tara Blake. I'm requesting that the school board demand our district leaders' due diligence in seeking feedback from the community before making such a recommendation to the board. I've heard that the kindergarten teachers at these schools had no idea that this was even being considered. I've been an involved parent for the last 5 years at Westgate, this being my 6th year. I know how involved the kindergarten teachers are and how the classrooms interact with the older grades, and the older students get a chance to help the younger and learn different responsibilities with the younger students. I personally feel this would be a huge stress on parents who have multiple parents at Westgate and would now have to arrange multiple pickups and drop-offs, conferences, work with multiple schedules across multiple schools. Plus, these staff are very involved with their communities and PSO PTAs. This would be a huge shock to them. As far as the PTA/PSO, it's hard now to get parents as involved as we like, with 7 grades in a school. Can you imagine in a school where there's only 1 grade and the parents know that the kids will be only at that school for 1 school year? What is the motivation? My thought is, why not use the school for a full elementary school for a few years and shift the boundaries to lessen the population at both schools? If it's good enough to put kindergarten students in it, why is it not good enough for multiple grades? I really think this idea needs to be relooked at, and feedback from the communities and teachers that will be impacted need to have their voices heard. Doing something like this with no feedback or voices being heard is not right. Please do not displace our staff and youngest students just like that. Next.
This is Ann. I'll read the next. The next comments from Chelsea Muanda. She says, I am writing to request that our district leaders take all steps in seeking feedback from our community before making a recommendation to separate and relocate our kindergartners from their local schools. Having a son who just completed kindergarten last year, I have seen numerous positive impacts as a result of being at the same school with other grade levels. My daughter will be starting kindergarten next year. Relocating our kindergartners will result in an unnecessary amount of transitions and adjustments between schools. Just as they get comfortable and learn the ins and outs of one school, they will be moved to the next. This puts undue stress and anxiety on our youngest students. Parents will have the burden of transporting their children to multiple schools who would otherwise be together. Learning opportunities between kindergartners and other students will no longer be available. Kindergarten teachers will not have help from older children for things like buses or reading. Teachers will be separated from a large portion of the community they would otherwise be part of and do so much to contribute to. Please consider the impact this would have on our students, teachers, and parents, especially when other alternatives are available. Please listen to the voices of those who would be affected. The next is Shannon Burley. She says, with an incoming kindergartner and an older student at Sherwood, this is quite sad. Ours have been walking Big Brother to school and is so excited to go to school with him. She is also less scared knowing he will be there. As parents, we will struggle with drop-off, pickup, and full-time work, one as a teacher in a neighboring district in this scenario. I would ask that you consider using Woodway Elementary for all grades for families who live close. This would help parents tremendously. The next is from Angela Williams, and she says, I am against this as an option. I do not want my kids attending separate schools and raising, I think she meant writing, different buses, nor do I want to try and be involved in 2 school systems. This is absolutely a deal breaker for me, and I'd rather homeschool than go this route. And then my fourth is going to be Courtney Laguio. She says, as a parent of 2 students in the Edmond School District, I was alarmed to learn that our district leaders are recommending removing the kindergarten classes at Westgate and Sherwood to the former Woodway Elementary School without soliciting any feedback. I think she means without soliciting any feedback from the community of, I think she means, or teaching staff that would be affected. I am requesting that the school board demand our district leaders due diligence in seeking feedback from the community before making such a recommendation to the board. When my oldest daughter was a kindergartner at Westgate Elementary 3 years ago, she directly benefited from interacting with older students. Her teacher paired each kindergarten student with a 5th grade reading mentor, supporting both learners in skill building and leadership development. I firmly believe this kind of interaction and mentorship helped my daughter adjust more easily to elementary school. That will not be the case for many incoming kindergarten students. I really worry about students that have a difficult time adjusting to kindergarten. By the time that they become comfortable with the campus and the staff, it is time for them to move onto the elementary school site. It just does not make sense to require our youngest children to make so many transitions or rob them of meaningful mentorship and learning opportunities with older students. Additionally, as I said before, I have 2 children currently enrolled in school now, but my youngest is still at home. Have to enroll my youngest at a separate school would be a difficult balancing act for our family. We currently live within walking distance of Westgate Elementary. Would my kindergartner have to be bused to a different location while his siblings walk to school? It does not appear that the district has not considered busing or any of the specifics. How can a thoughtful recommendation before examining the logistical challenges that families will face? Please consider the challenges and deficits posed by separating our kindergartners. Please instead, I think that might be insist, that our school district leaders due diligence. Oh, let me start that again. Please instead that school district leaders due diligence in seeking feedback from the teachers, staff, parents, and students. Thank you.
Gary, you want to go next,
Okay.
or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go next. Next one is from Courtney Newhouse. Taking kindergartners away from older siblings and school makes me feel, schoolmates feel like another way of making the poor planning and irresponsibility of the adults. Why do we choose the youngest children who are just starting their educational careers to ship off to another campus? I believe the board owes parents evidence-based research on how this is the best choice, opposed to other options to increase capacity. And then from Taylor Sportier, sorry about that. Hello, I'm a local Edmonds resident. I have a first grader this year and a third grader at Westgate Elementary. I have to first start by stating my disappointment with the district over how things have been handled via communication. As we know, all are trying to fight through a hard year. Communication can help lessen the frustration. I am making a request that this school board demand our district's due diligence in seeking feedback from the community before making such a recommendation to the board. For current teachers to find out about kindergarten center through the public forum is ridiculous. Furthermore, the Woodway building is not fit for kindergartners. There are many reservations that would have to happen to make it suitable. I don't want to also leave out the strain on families this would have. This would also make drop-offs for low-income families more difficult by adding another location, time, etc. On a more personal note, my daughter was in Claire Engelbert's class last year, kindergarten, and with her sister in third grade at the same school made her transition much better. She was able to see her sister during the day in passing and allowed for her to feel more confident about moving into such a year of learning and growth. I cannot imagine dropping her off for the first time at a different rundown building and expecting her to transition well. Please reconsider these plans as they are majorly disruptive to the current Edmonds community, and please allow the Edmonds teachers' voices to be heard. And from Lindsay Tracy, Dear Edmonds School Board, I'm writing to express my great concern over moving kindergarten from Westgate and Sherwood Elementary schools to the Woodway Elementary. While I understand that overcrowding is a problem, I do not feel that moving kindergarten or any other grade to a different location is a good solution. The reason is because transition to kindergarten can be difficult. To require the youngest students to make a transition to kindergarten campus and then again to an elementary campus defeats all the comforts that come with attending the neighborhood school, the excitement of being with older siblings, and cross-age group learning opportunities from older role models. Another reason I do not support this move is the loss of community within a campus that is designed for only 9 months of instruction. With families coming and going through a revolving door, it will be difficult to build a strong parent-teacher organization, which directly influences the quality of the educational experience. Finally, I feel the way in which this district is going about this potential move is underhanded. The administrators, teachers, and parents at these schools were not made aware of the potential shift until the agenda for tomorrow's meeting was released. That is no way to treat the teachers who have worked tirelessly to teach our district's youngest children. I hope the school board will go back to the drawing board and work with the schools to come up with the best solution for our overcrowded schools. Thank you. Lindsay Tracy, parent of 2 Westgate Elementary students. And from Mallory Cook, I am a kindergarten teacher at Sherwood Elementary. Today, the agenda, the district is putting forward the proposal that will alleviate the overcrowding issues at both Sherwood and Westgate by moving kindergarten to an alternate location for the 2021 to 2022 school year. While this is still in the beginning phases, it's important that all options be carefully vetted and that all proposals to reduce overcrowding at these buildings sites be looked at equally as viable options to the problem. Moving forward, I ask that the district be required to solicit feedback from staff and community before the final proposal is made. The district needs to include all parties in this decision-making process, most importantly, the staff and communities impacted by these decisions. As this process gets underway, I ask that there be clear communication from the district staff to the community at every step of the way, and that the district provide opportunities for genuine engagement on this issue from staff and community throughout the process. I believe that's 4. And who's left?
Okay, so next, thank you, Gary. I'll be starting with Catherine Sipe, I believe. And Catherine writes, in a last-minute meeting this afternoon, Westgate staff was introduced to an idea of moving our kindergartens to another campus with Sherwood Kinders also, too, because both schools were overcrowded. Both schools feed into College Place Middle School, which doesn't have a large student population, 456 according to a quick Google search. Westgate has 2.5 sixth grade classes this year and had that last year. We had 3 sixth grades the year prior. I'm one of those 6th grade teachers. I'm teaching the split class. If Sherwood's 6th grade is about the same size as Westgate's, perhaps the 6th graders of the 2 overcrowded schools can be relocated to a 6th grade campus at College Place Middle School, providing 3 classes or about 75 kids of relief from each. For Westgate, all 3 6th grade teachers work in portables. Perhaps the buildings, teaching team, and students can be moved as a set to the school they'll actually attend the following year. I'm not familiar with the staffing or classrooms at Sherwood, but in our case, it seems a simple move. To be clear, moving the 6th grade graders to a middle school model across the district is not what I'm suggesting. This is an alternative suggestion that could be thrown into the mix while determining what's best for our kids in this particular situation. Thanks for the chance to be heard. Kate Sipe, Westgate 5th, 6th, and 5th grade teacher. Next, we have Chuck Ridley. Please consider changing boundary lines to alleviate the overcrowding at Westgate and Sherwood. The kindergarten staff at Westgate is part of our community. It would be difficult to lose them for any length of time, even if it is only 1 year. Next, we have Marissa DeLeasley. I write to express my concern of the potential move of the Westgate K class to Woodway Elementary School, as well as the lack of communication to our current elementary staff. Both of my children attended Westgate for kindergarten, and I actively volunteered during the classroom time. The older children in the school had the opportunity to be mentors to the younger. Having the younger children in school with the older kids is a valuable part of their education, and it would be a shame to transition kids from preschool to a kindergarten classroom, then to another facility for the rest of the elementary school. The kindergarten staff are very important members of the school and work closely with the PSO. Without them, parent staff organizations would be a significant loss. There should at least be a public discussion with the teachers and parents of Westgate before the board makes a decision that would impact so many in the community. And I believe is the last one I'm reading. This is Ashley Adrian Road. What accommodations will be made to ease the situation of transportation of siblings to multiple schools? My coworker's daughter in Shoreline rode the bus to her neighborhood school, then took the kinder bus to her hub. Back to neighborhood schools at the end of the day in time to ride home from the neighborhood school with her sibling. Also, will the kindergarten students be in cohorts based on neighborhood school to ease the transition to first grade? Could there be another option so families with the kinder and older siblings do not have to juggle multiple locations? And that is the 21st.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll stop.
The 20th. Thank you, directors. There are additional comments and they will be attached to the minutes and available for public review. Dr. Balderas, did you want to make a couple of comments about these public comments that we just heard before we move on?
Yes, thank you. First, I appreciate all the public comments. I think what staff wanted to do is there have been discussions in the past regarding a kindergarten hub, per my understanding. Again, we have a lot of new people. I know I'm new, but there has been discussion regarding the overcrowding and this being a possibility. I want to ensure the patrons that there will be a process for this. We wanted to get this in front of the board for a discussion tonight to ensure that the board is, again, kept aware of what we are considering. And there will be absolutely a public discussion with the community and also with staff. But again, I think this is something that's been done, that's been discussed before. And this is not a new issue for my communication with staff. This is not something that's new. We are overcrowded at all elementary, at the elementary level. We're over capacity in our schools. And I think coming up with all the variety of solutions that are possible should be had and discussed and reviewed. But at the end of the day, I think the solution that's most viable long term, it's the passage of a bond, to be able to alleviate overcrowding and continue the discussion that this community and the boards had regarding moving 6th grade to middle school. I think that's the most viable solution we can have. We have had enrollment studies done, and you'll see some of that later on tonight. But again, I want to reassure the community that we will have a process for determination, and want to also let the community know that I wanted to get this in front of the board tonight. Staff wanted to get this in front of the board tonight prior to going out to community, so the board is aware of the situation that we're dealing with as we come up with solutions. Again, and having kindergartners be moved out of the school is not optimal. That is not optimal. It's not the best solution. But we've heard time and time again from my staff that there has been concerns with overcrowding at Sherwood and Westgate over the years, and this is one solution that will be reviewed and discussed, and it is a viable solution. Other solutions include additional portables, but there are issues with that. Another solution is capping classrooms, but there are issues with that as well. So look forward to the discussion later on with the board, but thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, Dr. Balderas. I have made a kind of a muck of our agenda. So I need to go back and correct my mistakes. We did approve the amendment, but now we have to vote on the new agenda as amended. Do I hear a motion?
This is Ann, so moved.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for tonight as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes and the amended agenda is approved. Next, and I completely skipped over this because it's unusual, I guess. We have our school board elections. Every year we elect leadership for the school board. The first item is the election of a president. Is there a nomination?
I would like
I'd
to,
like to,
oh, wow, well, I think we both, go ahead.
go
Dan.
ahead, Karen. Go ahead.
I would like to, Madam President, I would like to nominate Deborah Kilgore as the president of the Edmond School Board.
I second that nomination.
Okay, great. Are there any other nominations? Well, thank you so much in your trust and your nominations. Now we will have a roll call vote. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. To vote on the nominee, the candidate for school board for the coming year. That's me, Deborah Kilgore. May I have a roll call vote, please? Oh, and
Director
I guess if
Kadam?
you're in favor, say yes.
Allison, did you call for me?
I did.
Okay, I enthusiastically say yes.
Director McMurray,
Yes.
Director Chase,
Yes.
Director Noble,
Yes.
Director Kilgore.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I guess I'm elected for the coming year again. So I will continue to serve in this capacity, and I appreciate your trust and your collegiality. Next, we have election of a vice president. Do I hear a nomination? Or
Madam
can I do it?
President,
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to nominate Nancy Kadams for the position of vice president.
This is Ann. I second.
It's been moved and seconded to nominate Nancy Kadams for vice president. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. All those in favor of Nancy Kadams for vice president for the coming year, please indicate by saying yes during the roll call vote.
Director Kadams,
Yes, thank you.
Director McMurray,
Yes.
Director Chase,
Yes.
Director Noble,
Yes.
Director Kilgore.
Yes. And Nancy Kadams is our new vice president for the coming year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we have election for our legislative representative. Do I hear a nomination? Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Karen Chase, Director Chase, as our legislative representative.
This is Ann. I second.
It's been moved and seconded to nominate Karen Chase for legislative representative for the coming year. Are there any other further nominations? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Director Kadams,
Yes, aye.
Director McMurray,
Yes.
Director Chase,
Yes.
Director Noble,
Yes.
Director Kilgore.
Yes. And Director Karen Chase is our legislative rep for the coming year. Yay, congratulations, everyone. Okay, moving on. And I think we're back in order. We have a consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This
I
is
move to-
Ann. So moved.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote, please. Oh, yes.
Director Kadams,
Aye.
Director McMurray,
Aye.
Director Chase,
Aye.
Director Noble,
Aye.
Director Kilgore.
Aye. And the consent agenda is approved. And we have moved up our discussion topic on the Housing Hope Partnership for Homeless Family Housing. Take it away. Is this?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg Schwab, who's going to introduce our guest, and I appreciate the board's indulgence to having this be moved up. So turn it over to Mr. Schwab.
Thank you. Hello again, Board of Directors. So joining me tonight is Fred Safstrom, who was with us last time when we did the presentation on Housing Hope. And really, we're here tonight really just to see what questions the board has, having had a chance to reflect on the presentation and what it is that we're working toward. We just wanted to open it up to some questions.
I have one big sort of giant area of question, concern. How can we make sure that this project or improve our chances that this project serves the families of children in the Edmonds School District? That's
Okay.
sort of my overarching concern.
Okay, that is a great question, and you know what makes that question great is what makes this project really unique. You know, if this were just another affordable housing project financed with 9% low-income housing tax credits, like we do all the time, we've done this 15, 16, 17 times. You know, over our life, there is, I would say, nary one family that would be served that would be a student that would be have a student in it. And the reason being is that in Snohomish County, we have all agreed. I say agreed, but we're really required to adhere to the coordinated entry system for homeless persons if we take federal resources. And when we do that, we go to the coordinated entry system for homeless persons and households. Those households are ranked in accordance with their vulnerabilities. And a household that is living unsheltered as opposed to couch surfing is going to be more vulnerable. It is going to rise to the top of the list, and that's the household that we are going to serve. So in ordinary circumstances, the answer to your question would be, we would never serve your student households. What makes this work really unique is that we have reached an agreement with Snohomish County, which administers the coordinated entry system. And because of the donation of public property by the school district, and because the school district has a mission to enhance the education of their students, and because housing these homeless parents and families will enhance the education of those students, Snohomish County has agreed to exempt this project from the coordinated entry system. What that means is that we are then permitted, and we can do that without impacting any of the other financing we're going to get on the project. We still have rules we need to meet, but we're not required to go through that coordinated entry system. What that means is that we have suggested in the lease agreement that the school district, who is aware of who your homeless households are and are aware of what their circumstances are, your district will refer families to us for housing. We will go to that list, and we will select households off that list. Could be the size of apartment is available, would influence the size of household that would go into that unit. So it's not necessarily, we won't necessarily work off the top of your list, but we will strictly work off of your list, and we will house those families that you refer to us, unless all of your households are served and there is, you've referred, you have no families to refer to us. It is only then that we would house someone from outside of the families that you've referred to us.
I had actually two questions for you. The first question is, what is the long-term game plan for this? What happens in 50 years or 60 or 70 years when this apartment is now 60, 70 years old and probably not even serviceable if you look at what 70-year-old buildings look like? What is the end game for this project?
Mm-hmm. So we have a 75-year lease agreement. I will say that we build buildings in an extremely durable manner. There's a number of reasons for that. One of them is that for us, I guess like you, maintenance resources are scarce, so capital resources are actually easier to acquire than maintenance resources. That may sound a little familiar to you. And therefore, we build our buildings to last. We're not at 75 years, but we have been in operation for 33 years. And we have two projects that were our two original projects that were put into service 32 years ago. And neither of them were new when they were put into service. They were probably 40-year-old buildings, 50-year-old buildings when they're put into service. And one of them, we just completed a major rehabilitation on that building, and it's going to go for another 30 years before it needs another rehabilitation. So unlike a private market, housing developer who creates housing and, creates it with the intention of turning it at some point in time and taking the proceeds from the sale and reinvesting, that's not part of our game plan at all. We have never done that. So we hold our properties for the long run. So we will plan to own and operate, this building for 75 years. Now, at the end of 75 years, the lease would expire. And at that point, there would be if we mutually agree, actually not we, but it'd be our replacements mutually agree that the lease would be beneficial to be extended, then obviously that could be done. Otherwise, the property would revert back to the district, and the district would choose to do with it what you would choose to do with it.
Thank you. That's great. The other question is kind of really a minor question, but have we talked to I guess a specific Little League or whoever it is that uses that space now for a rather unusual baseball field, and let them know that this is a possibility coming up?
Yeah, we have, Gary. We've let them know, and they understand that this is a project that's coming, and I think they're understanding. We'll work with them also to make sure that we can find them access to another field that they can use.
I think I'd miss that field. It has a really short left field porch, and I think I even could hit it over that fence.
This is Ann. This is kind of a district question. So because of the proximity of the property to Cedar Valley Community School, it would mean that any of our elementary students who were housed in that development would, Cedar Valley Community School would be their neighborhood school. Is that correct?
That
That'd be
is
correct.
correct. That is correct. Oh, yeah, Greg could say that, but I'm sure that would be correct. Yeah. Because you're going to be in the lease agreement, you could choose to prioritize, students that would be in walkable distance from that location if you were to choose to do that. Or you could just do that administratively by who you're referring, to us to be housed.
Well, if we used a criteria regarding who had the greatest need, then what that would do is if a family had a greater need and they were normally in the Martha Lake area, they would just basically move schools. They would
sure.
move from Martha Lake to, just as if they were in a house or an apartment in one part of the district and moved to another part, they would just transfer to the nearest school, which for them would be Cedar Valley.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had thought, and this is for our staff, I guess, this question. I had thought in the last discussion, it was said that if a student in this situation preferred to stay at their home school, we would provide transportation and let them stay at their home school. Is that no longer the case?
No, that's correct.
Yep, that's correct, Nancy. That's our students that qualify for McKinney-Vento services. So absolutely.
Would they still, however, qualify for McKinney-Vento services if they were now housed in the Cedar Valley or that Cedar Valley thing? It would seem like if they became housed, they would no longer be a McKinney-Vento and then would not be eligible for the district to physically move them from the Cedar Valley Community School, which would now be their neighborhood school, to a different school. I'm concerned about creating a situation where we would begin the transporting students from one school to another outside of a McKinney-Vento designation.
So Ann, I can speak to that and say that we already have a practice of doing that in the district when students move within the district to another elementary school. If a family chooses to stay, they can do that. And so I think I think it would be a matter of working with that family. And obviously, I think given the choice of, do you want to stay at your school or do you want to go to a school where you can walk to school every day? I think that would be a conversation we would have to help support that family. But again, I think at the end of the day, we would want to do whatever is in the best interest of supporting that student and that family.
And I'll jump in here really quick. So McKinney-Vento designation is year to year. It's an annual designation. And so every year at the end of the year, we work with families to see if they're still experiencing unstable housing and then what our services will be going forward. So the families, to Greg's point, they would have the option of course, being transported back to their school of origin, which is what they've already established. So they're guaranteed that through that legislation. Or if they do choose to go to the school that they're living very close to and have regular, adequate housing and all of those things and choose to walk there, they could do that as well. But that would be the choice of the family for that school year.
Dana, are you saying that it would be only for that school year and not for future school years?
It depends on the designation of the housing. Some housing is deemed temporary, and so it just depends annually. So every year annually that is reviewed on a variety of circumstances.
This is Ann. It would be interesting to know if families were placed in that housing unit, how that would affect their McKinney-Vento status going forward. And Greg, so just to clarify, you're saying that, for example, I have kids in Westgate Elementary, but I decide I want to move to Mount Lake Terrace, and now I'm closer to Terrace Park, but I decide, and I voluntarily move my family Mount Lake Terrace, but I really want my kids to stay at the school they were at before and not go to Terrace Park. Are you saying that the district would pick my kids up somewhere and transport them to Terrace Park?
No, they would have, through our interdistrict transfer process, they would have the option to select to do an interdistrict request to transfer. But in terms of when a family does that, when they make a request to transfer, then one of the things we let them know is that transportation is on them. But in the case of a McKinney-Vento student, because of their McKinney-Vento status, that's a different set of rules apply around transportation. But for our students who are not McKinney-Vento, if the family moves within the district, they can go through our intra-district transfer process and request to stay, or they can go to the new school.
Okay, so it sounds like we would need to get some sort of an opinion on whether or not placement within this proposed housing unit would affect a McKinney-Vento status.
That's correct.
I would add to say, once a student was and family was placed, housing into this proposed facility, I would say regardless, the way we consider them is their status upon entry. And so they would remain eligible to stay there even if they had lost their McKinney-Vento status.
Right, as far as you were concerned, but as far as the district was concerned, if they lost the McKinney-Vento status, then the district would not automatically provide them transportation to whatever district school they were at before. They would then be reassigned to Cedar Valley. And if they wanted, for example, to stay at Martha Lake, they would be required to transport. The family would be required to transport. I was just trying to nail down that particular because depending upon the number of families, it affects our transportation budget.
If they lost their McKinney-Vento status.
Yes.
And that's, I think we need to get a ruling on that.
I wonder, excuse me, if there is any further detail. So one of the other concerns I had was about the vouchers and who has vouchers and whether our families would be likely to have vouchers. And there was some discussion about locally funded vouchers. And I wondered if that had developed at all since the last time we met and if there were any more details about that.
Nothing officially has developed, although at the last legislature, the legislature passed basically a sales tax option that we believe is soon going to be adopted by Snohomish County. And that is going to provide about $15 million a year. 60% of which can be used for capital. The remainder can be used for a variety of services and other activities. And it is very possible that some of that money will be allocated for vouchers. So there may be a new voucher program that comes out of that. And I'm just speculating. I'm just saying it's a possibility. I'm not saying that that's a done deal by any means. But it is clear that the Housing Authority of Snohomish County has been by our side every step of the way along this path to housing the students in South County. Dwayne Leonard, the executive director, was at our last board meeting when I was here, and he's made very clear that if locally funded vouchers do not become available, he has the ability and the power to project base federal vouchers on this project, and he would do so. So what that would mean is that all of the units at this project would would come with a voucher. So whoever lives there would have a voucher, and they would pay 30% of their income for a combination of rent and utilities. In addition to that, what makes these vouchers especially valuable in a situation like this is that after 18 months of tenancy at the unit, they become eligible for what's called an exit voucher or a moving voucher or a tenant-based voucher, different names for it. And they can take that exit voucher and they can move to any private landlord housing they choose to move to and continue to pay the same dollar amount in rent and utilities as they were paying before residing in our property. And what that does is it provides a turnover of the households living in these units. So as their students, graduate from Edmonds Public Schools, they're going to be moving on and opening up that apartment for a new family to occupy.
This is Anne, but could there be a situation, for example, that you have a family with older students? The older students graduate, but the other family members decide they don't want to move. And could there be a situation where you might have one or more families that no longer have students in the district, but are still occupying that housing unit? And if so, how long could they continue to stay in that housing unit?
Well, the technical answer to that is that this is permanent housing and they can stay there as long as they want. I mean, we could never force them to move. However, we have a lot of project-based voucher units in our portfolio. I'd say we have over 300 in our portfolio. And on average, as I said before, they receive an exit voucher. They're eligible for an exit voucher after 12 months. Some of them don't actually receive it at 12 months. Some of them receive it later than that. But the average tenancy of our project-based voucher tenants is just 18 months. We have a long track history that shows that when a family has an opportunity to move to housing of their choice, and that's actually what the program is named, is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, they take that choice and they choose to move to an apartment or a house of their choosing.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking back about, I'm assuming we would need to have some sort of the district would need a legal kind of overview for us to make sure that we were not in any way violating the law that says we cannot take public assets and create a private benefit. Mm-hmm. Has the district contacted our attorneys to get a legal judgment on whether or not this would violate state law?
I will give you the good news that will be a very low cost bill for your attorney. And the reason being is that the state legislature 2 years ago passed a bill specifically to authorize this activity, specifically for school districts. And the last legislature, we actually got another clarification, a minor change to the RCW that removed a problematic provision that was in the RCW prior to that. An RCW that basically said the district could revert the property, take the property back, anytime it wants to, regardless of what the lease says. And, you know, that just doesn't work. So we got that removed from the state law. So I think your attorney will tell you that the state law is very clear.
And just to let you know, the draft of a ground lease agreement is currently with our attorneys right now for review. So it's being vetted as we speak.
Well, and we do have a history of using what's considered surplus property. For example, years ago, when I first came on the board, the city of Edmonds was leasing a substantial acreage of school district property that they put their play fields on for the downtown city of Edmonds at $1 a year. So it is not unknown for the district to allow surplus property to benefit segments of its borders, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think it's simplified a little bit in that we are not a for-profit organization. Essentially, our owners are the community. So this is anything that benefits us and benefits the community. And of course, you're doing this to enhance student achievement. So you're doing this to enhance your mission as a school district.
Are there any other questions? Oh,
You guys ask great questions. I love this. This is great.
Has anybody brought up a kind of a negative or something? I'm assuming this is because the state legislature dealt with it. There are other examples out there of other districts, school districts doing this. In your knowledge, have there been any challenges to this, or have there been any issues that have created problems in say in the past 20 years?
I hesitate to say this, but I'm not aware of I think this is groundbreaking territory. I think the legislature has set up the pathway, and they did this just a couple years ago. We jumped on it right away, and I think lots of people are watching us. I think there's other discussions going on, but I think that I think we're blazing the trail here, at least in the state of Washington.
Thank you for all this great information, and it's a wonderful discussion. And I'm wondering if we are thinking about moving forward, if we have a tentative timeline that we had in mind, because we obviously need to solicit some community input, and just wondering if we had just broad strokes timeline we're thinking about.
Broad strokes are the ground lease agreement is, like I said, is being reviewed by legal right now, and our hope is to bring something to you all for review in January. And then we are also working on a communication plan, because we want to make sure that we're being very upfront about letting our community know this is something we're planning to do. So Harmony and her team are also working on a communication plan with Housing Hope to make sure that we're keeping our community involved along the way, to make sure that this isn't a surprise to anybody. So looking at January to bring a draft of something for us to take a look at, and then we'll build a timeline from there.
There'd be a public hearing, I think we're talking about, connected to that.
So what if somebody could say, well, if the district needs money, why don't they just sell the property and get some money for it, and that could go into capital projects? Is there, it's a weird piece of property in an odd space. Has the district ever done an appraisal of what its value is?
I'd have to defer to Ed Peters or Lydia, who I think may both be on the call, because I can't answer that question.
So right now, because it's been a part of Cedar Valley, we've only looked at it for potential use within the district. So it hasn't been evaluated as a standalone piece of property. the capital projects department contracted with a surveyor to make sure that we had an accurate legal description of just that triangular piece of property, so that we could write it up in the lease properly. So it hasn't been looked at independently of the entire Cedar Valley.
Well, my suggestion is to get a current appraisal, because then at least you would have a definitive dollar amount that you could then compare to the 75 years of benefit to Edmonds School District families and students. Because my guess is you might have an objection, and usually sometimes the objections maybe wouldn't have an accurate dollar figure of what that piece of property might actually be worth, depending upon what could be done with it. And I personally, I would like to be able to have something to be able to say, well, you say you think the district could get 5 million for it, but frankly, where it is and how it's the size and whatever else, it's only worth X. Being able to give an actual definitive dollar amount, like I say, that you could then compare to 75 years of benefit to Edmonds students and families, to me would be a good thing to have.
I would agree with that. And I think certainly the case can be made that there will be quite a bit of benefit to the district with this project.
Yeah, I just think you can mitigate a future objection by current and accurate information.
I agree. And so we'll work on that. So thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to give my appreciation for your diligence in working with Snohomish County to work through that one huge objection that we had. And of course, their willingness to go ahead and understand the unique nature of the project, and allowing a waiver, if you will, to what we were doing. That was, for me, that was one of the biggest roadblocks that I could see, and you've effectively moved it out of the way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I agree with Ann's comments. That was a significant issue for me, was to try to improve the chances of this project being focused on our families and our children.
It is, I did a little bit of math, a couple weeks ago, and if we had, we're gonna have 40 or 50 units there, and if you got 1.5 students maybe in each unit, and if they're turning over at an average of 18 months, and then figure that over 75 years, you were serving thousands of students in these units, thousands of students. And so the benefit, when you think about the benefit to those students from their increased student achievement, for that many kids over that many years, I think, I don't care, $1 million for the land, I don't care. It's gonna, are you gonna get greater achievement out of $1 million in some capital project, or out of, these better student achievement for thousands of kids? Which is the better, which are you gonna get the most value? And I would argue those kids.
Thank you so much for visiting with us again and answering our questions. Press on. I'm personally just thrilled to be a part of this in any small way.
as we are thrilled to be working alongside you, very honored to be working alongside you, and just raring to go.
And we'll be back in January.
Okay, all right, look forward to it. I wish you all a great holiday.
Thank you. Okay. Well, that was wonderful to get those questions answered. Please let me make sure that I'm in the right place. Next, we have our reentry update. Dr. Balderas.
Thank you, board. And again, I appreciate that conversation as well. For reentry, our COVID cases keep going up, and that's again slowed our process for reentry of some of our students. And right now, we do have some kids in our schools and are looking forward to bringing more kids when it's safe to do so, and our cases start to decline. But we are going to continue with plans that maybe look a little bit different. I think one of the things that we're thinking as a staff is talking to other colleagues in other districts is, the way we reenter may look differently that's been planned. So we have to be very nimble in our approach as we continue to work through this very difficult school year. So instead of multiple grades, it could possibly be 1 or 2 grades at the elementary level. It could be small learning hubs, as we've talked about before. So again, the reentry is being reviewed. We'll continue to assess and continue to move forward with planning, but it may look a little different as we continue to morph. I am going to ask the students. We do have students here tonight on our advisory, that are advisory board members, and I'd like to see if the students want to make a comment or two with regards to how they're feeling right now as we get near to the longer winter break. And I know we have a few kids. I see 2 faces up there. I see Kai and Isabel. I don't know if, but there's Bailey as well. And I know we have Vanya and Cecilia. I'd like to ask the students, I don't want to take too much time, but if you want to make a comment or two about how you're feeling right now.
I will say that it has been overwhelming, but the No Work Wednesdays has definitely, I feel like that's really going to help us. It's going to be really beneficial to sort of get any extra work done that we need to get done. And I feel like that was really helpful. And these times are overwhelming, but I feel like that was helpful.
Thank you. Maybe Kai, then Cecilia? Sorelia? Sorry.
Yeah, Sorelia. I wanted to thank you and the school board for deciding to do No Work Wednesday, because each day was a bit overwhelming with all the work piled on top. On all my classes, and my classmates agree that it was like a miracle from God or something that happened. And I'm also appreciative of the no winter break with homework, because it's finally the holidays for people to enjoy themselves after this devastating year. And I thought that was very thoughtful of the school board to do.
Kai?
Yeah, thank you. Teachers have been taking an extra emphasis on our mental health recently, doing more personal check-ins, which has been really nice. And they've also clarified that they're not going to be cramming in a bunch of projects and exams right before winter breaks. That's also a big relief on students' parts. Thank you.
Isabel, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. And I mean, it has been difficult, but like we all understand that the re-entry needs to be safe. And yeah, we're just gonna have to like adapt to it. And I think we're still trying to adapt to it and find out like what works best for the students and the teachers. So it has been getting better.
Thank you. Vanya?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said. And just to kind of think of more on the break side, I'm a little bit concerned about how students will be feeling throughout the break, just because during those 2 weeks, they're just all alone. There's no Zoom classes or anything for them to connect with a person on. They're just in their 4 walls of their home with their few family members. And I'm just concerned what that would do to students' mental health and how they would react following once the break is over and once they get back into the academics back in January. So.
So thank you for your comments. Again, it's we're here because of kids. It's always great to hear them, and I appreciate the board having them on for tonight and every board meeting.
Dr. Balderas, we also have Ritika on. I don't know
Miss Ritika. Sorry, Ritika.
if you want to make another comment.
You're fine. Yeah, sure. I think this whole entire process has been easing in, easing out. And I think that's one of the most important things to hang on to. I will say there has been a lot of appreciation and kind of this prospect that everyone feels like, the board is listening, right? And like, because the No Work Wednesdays, I've heard that has really helped. And I mean, every day there's still challenges of how we're adapting to this, and every day is a challenge in terms of how to adapt. And I don't think, that it's going to take a while to completely be in a situation where we know exactly what we're doing, because this is just unconventional and this year has been insane. But I think easing in, easing out, like taking things slower than we normally would, and that kind of emphasis from the district to slow down and to give those No Work Wednesdays has been really, really helpful.
So thank you, Ritika, and I apologize for missing you. You were on my second page, so thank you for
nice.
Thank you, and for your leadership as well across our district. Board members, are there any questions you may have?
Are you interested in talking about any of the details of what you might see coming up in January?
Yeah, so what we're looking at for January, and I'm going to turn it over to Dana, who's going to talk about a few more kids that we're looking at, but also maybe also talk to, if I can ask Mr. Schwab, Greg Schwab, to be able to speak a little bit about the conversations we're having about some hubs at the secondary schools too. So Dana, maybe you first.
Absolutely. So we had initially planned on a few of our IS programs coming back, a couple weeks ago now, and we put on a small pause just because the rates were increasing so much. So we're watching this closely. Our buildings stand ready. The two buildings that would open next are Maplewood IS program and Briar Elementary. And so they are both ready to go. And we are also planning on our DK programs coming back on January 4th. So, and then in addition, some IS programs at Scriber High School, and then at we have Project Search at Swedish. That's a work experience program. So those are the next dates kind of coming up. But we also, we were really paying really close attention to the rates that are coming out. And as you know, Monday was 428 per 100,000, which is a huge increase in Snohomish County. So trying to be mindful of that, but also, doing all the mitigating strategies that we can do and listening to all the experts across the country and what these really small groups mean, and just being thoughtful in that, and knowing that our engagement is difficult. And that's why we brought many of those students back first. And a huge shout out to our VI program at Hazelwood and our DHH program at Madrona, who are going great guns, and it is just going so well. We've been so pleasantly surprised. And who knew that preschoolers could do such an amazing job of keeping masks on? So that was a fear, and our kiddos are rocking it. So it's really exciting. So we've been so pleasantly surprised, but, and the parent and our families, and doing the prep and the social stories and all of those things to prepare kids for that. So things are going well. We just need to thoughtfully, bring in the next groups, and then we'll go forward. And I defer to Greg on some of the conversations he's having at the secondary level about learning hubs.
Thank you.
Dana, could you explain what RDK means?
Yeah, our developmental kindergarten programs. So there'll be all of our developmental kindergartners, that the families that chose to be in person, that will be starting on January 4th when we come back. And we have a session that will be remote too. So we had enough that it made one remote classroom, and then the other four will be in person.
To speak a little bit about the work at secondary, so building on the amazing work of Dr. Vergara and getting the former Alderwood eHub up and running for our McKinney-Vento students, we're meeting with middle schools and high schools right now to do some planning to see to identify student groups that we can bring back in a very similar support and access model at our middle schools and high schools. So we're working on developing those plans right now, and we have a lot of work to do, but we really want to start finding ways to bring in those students that we know need access and support. Not necessarily delivering any kind of an instructional program, but providing a place where kids can access the internet, where they can have some personal contact with a staff member at their home school site. And so that's where, again, we're just at the very beginning stages of that work, but we hope to have something more firmly developed by the time we leave for winter break, with some plans to hopefully ramp this up after the holidays. So again, I think we have a good example of how it can look at former Alderwood, and we're building off of that and going to continue to try to build those plans at each of our middle schools and high schools as well.
And we're also
Greg,
looking.
I'm sorry. I have a quick question. How many kids now are at the eHub?
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
let Rick answer that one.
Yeah, thank you. I can speak for that. So it varies. This is the first week that we start with transportation. So right now we have 2 buses, and starting they drop kids at 8:30 in the morning and also 11:30 a.m. So about, I want to say an average of about 10 students per day right now, but it keeps going up. We're trying to figure out a few things in terms of transportation. With some students, it's kind of hard to start waking up a little bit earlier, so we're working on that. But we are seeing more and more students and also families coming in, so using our facilities.
We're also having conversations regarding athletics. I know the season's supposed to be kicking off here in February, the first season. Of course, it's up for discussion, but we're looking at trying to bring some of our kids back, possibly just having a discussion right now if we can bring some of our kids back in small pods. If mitigation efforts continue in our system and we are able to safely do so. I know there's a question regarding why would we do that when we can't bring our kids back to our campuses. It goes back to the social emotional needs of our kids and our kids wanting to be involved and belong to what they're used to. If our kids have, especially the kids at the high school, their whole lives, a lot of our students that are in activities in athletics, not just athletics, but activities in athletics, their whole lives, they're geared to our high school or geared to our college, and they worked hard all the way through. And it's really having a mental impact on our kids. And then I hear that often. It's having a mental impact on our kids because they can't do what they're used to doing. Just like our kids have stated online tonight. It is very, very difficult. And I appreciate the kids' comments tonight because it is true. So that's another thing that's going to be coming forward to the board. And I know Greg Schwab, under his leadership, is working with athletic directors, but also the building principals on some possible recommendations for January. Any questions from the board that I can answer, or the staff that I can have staff answer?
I have a question. I don't know if it's answerable. I'm sitting here thinking about, and I can't remember which student said this, but one of our student advisors mentioned her concern about kids for 2 weeks not having any connections to school or outside their homes. And I'm just wondering if there's anything we could do to help facilitate ways for kids to be able to connect to their peers during that 2-week break. I can't think of any suggestions off the top of my head, but there are people smarter than me. And I feel like there might be ways. And if there are some things we could do to help facilitate that strikes me as something that could help the kids.
Can I speak to this real quick?
Latika, please.
Okay, so I know one of the things that our school has done is this is already something that's going on, so I'm assuming that it will continue. The Wednesdays, since those are like non-student days, we've had like Zooms that are just open for people to come in and interact with other students, so that's an option as well.
Nancy, I think you bring up a really good point, Nancy, and Ratika, thank you for that feedback. I think this is something that we will continue to work with our principals in terms of how to provide outreach for our families. I know social emotional support is something that's been an emphasis for us as a district, and we'll continue to do so. So that's something that we can report back to the board as well in terms of how things are and what we're doing to support our kiddos in a broader context, just beyond the 2 weeks that the kids are at home, but in terms of the continual approach in terms of addressing the social emotional needs of our kids.
I've mentioned this before that I volunteer for a 4th grade class once a week. And one week, the teacher left the chat open by accident when we were doing some small group discussion, and the kids immediately started exchanging usernames for their games and their gaming, like, Roblox and Minecraft and such. And I relayed that to the teacher, and as a possible way to help the kids connect, to open that up. And he did offer it to the kids, and found, this is for the younger kids anyway, that some of them had friends that they hadn't spoken with since March because they didn't know how to get in touch with them. And so the teacher in this particular class was going to help those kids get in touch with some of their friends through email and so forth, to at least get that open that possibility for them. So for the younger kids anyway, this doesn't apply to the older ones so much, who already know how to get in touch with their friends mostly. But for the younger kids, it's something we might not have thought of, is that they don't know each other's email addresses if they're not in the same class, or they don't know their usernames.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from the boards, or any questions I can answer, or any other comments from the students? Thank you. And I also want to let the board know that Dr. Vergara and Dr. Young are the ones that are kind of spearheading the phase 2 efforts as well with the rest of the cabinet, but they're the ones that are taking lead on future reopenings. And he'll be a soon Dr. Schwab. I keep saying Dr. Greg Schwab is going to be leading later portions as well. So again, I appreciate the support and the students. Thank you for your comments on this topic.
Thank you. Next, we have our Food and Nutrition Services report. Megan DeVries.
I want to start off before Megan starts is, sometimes I consider what Megan and her team have done as being one of the heroes of this, and I truly do. And what we've done to support the feeding of our families, it really is, to me, it brings really, it gets me emotional a little bit, because people don't realize the work that we have done to support our families. And under Megan's leadership, it's been made available to have actually food on the table and provide and go above and beyond that many districts have done. So Megan, thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, and it makes me feel just as good to see families getting fed. So I think Sherelle is going to share my slides here. I don't see them right now. We have talked about how to shelter our kiddos, and now we are going to talk about how to nourish our kiddos. So I am just here tonight to share all feel-good updates. Things are going well in the food service world. There's always areas we can improve, always more kids we're trying to reach. We are doing outreach to our families that qualify for free or reduced meals right now to get them on board and make sure that they are connected to either a grab and go pickup site or getting deliveries. So things are going well in the food service world. This is a couple of my team members. If you don't know, right now we are packaging up 7 days of breakfast and 7 days of lunch. Families get a box and they get a gallon of milk. We actually switched Thanksgiving week to a half gallon of chocolate milk, so they're eligible to get a half gallon of chocolate and a half gallon of white milk. This other picture here is our school food trucks. So these are the 2 trucks that you see out and about in the district. We have a couple of the box trucks that go out to neighborhoods to serve, and our food truck, which we got with grant funding, this it arrived in the district at the end of June and got on the road in the beginning of July, was purchased with grant funding, and that has been a great way for us to bring meals directly to our kiddos. That services apartment complexes, some parks, different neighborhoods that we worked with transportation to identify as areas where we had a high population of our free reduced students living. Cheryl, you can go ahead to go to the next slide. So here's kind of a peek inside our meal service. We have served over 1.4 million meals since this pandemic closed schools on March 16th, which is a huge milestone. And I appreciate the celebration we had in October for our team reaching that millionth meal milestone. And every week we are connecting with more kiddos. And that's a big thank you to our staff who keep connecting with families as they identify that they have needs. Our family support team is helping us, and also some of the partnerships that I will talk about next. And as of tonight, we have served 758,000 meals just this fall alone since September new school year started. We took one Wednesday off the week before school started and regrouped, but it's been pretty continuous service since March. The kits are available to all kids 1 to 18. It's one of those things that I just keep reiterating to the community is that you don't need to qualify for free reduced meals. You do not need to be an Edmonds student. You could have preschoolers. You can have students that are not at school right now. Whatever the situation is, if you have your friends' kids over because you guys don't have childcare, any child 1 to 18 is eligible for free meals, and this is through USDA funding. I already mentioned the meal kits, what they include. This is just a picture of one of our meal kits. You can see a variety of fresh produce, plus the 7 different entrees for breakfast and lunch, and then local milk included in there. Next slide, please. So we have been very grateful to see have so many partners. Part of the reason we have been successful reaching more kids each week is because we keep connecting with more partners. One of our biggest partners is the family support team. They are fabulous about wrapping around our families, but also have allowed us to come alongside them and help nourish their kids in different ways. So we have 7 school pop-up pantries in the district that are run by the family support team. And we realized that some of our families were not able to make it to meal site, but once a month they coordinate time to go to the pickup at the pantry because they get food from the Nourishing Network, from the school, from the food bank. And then so we added the school meal kits there to give them some more fresh items as well. This month we're including through some funding from Melina, we have been able to provide some extras for the holidays, so more of a holiday style kit for the pop-up pantries. We also are partnered with the Linwood Food Bank and the Mount Lake Terrace Food Bank, and we distribute 600 meal kits a week through them to families. So when I say a meal kit, that's 14 meals, 7 breakfasts, 7 lunches. And then the Foundation's Nourishing Network is really stepped along to help us this summer. We had bus drivers helping us with home deliveries in the spring. And then when bus drivers' contracts were up for summer, the foundation started coordinating home deliveries because we have a number of McKinney-Vento kids who cannot make it to a meal pickup site or who live out of district. We also have families that have transportation issues, or they have so many health issues in their families that they were barriers to them picking up meals. And so we, with the Nourishing Network, the kitchen, Edmonds Woodway Kitchen prepares and stages meals, and it is like clockwork. Volunteers come and they pick up their kits and they go deliver them on their routes. And this district should be very proud of our staff because, and I'm not talking just food service staff, I'm talking all Edmonds school staff, is that we put out an email just to ask because the foundation wants a little bit of a break. So we're giving them Christmas week and winter they were giving them this 2 weeks in December for winter break off for the volunteers. And so we put it out there to the Edmond School District staff to see if we could fill that need. And we have 36 volunteers who've signed up. So the meals will be delivered over winter break on the 23rd and the 30th for our families. I think next slide. And then if you don't know where our meal locations are, I just want to share that the website has a link, and it's called Grab and Go Meals, and we have 50 pickup locations. So that includes schools, community locations like apartment complexes and parks. Just try to reach as many kids as possible. We've had opportunity to partner with a couple schools on some special events this fall, so I just wanted to share a little bit about that. ECAP has done a special event each month, so they did a pizza party in October. In November, we served our holiday kits with school turkey gravy, which if you're not familiar with school turkey gravy, you're missing out. Is actually gravy that we roast turkeys and then we chop it up, and so you get chunks of turkey in there and mashed potatoes, which my daughter told me were the best mashed potatoes she's ever had. I was like, thanks. I guess I've been working too hard on mashed potatoes. I'll bring them from school more often. And so this here is a picture here of the ECAP did a pizza party as a way to connect with their families, and Alderwood Early Learning Center is going to be doing the same thing with their families here next week. But basically it was a build your own pizza kit. So we sent flatbread to use as the crust, pizza sauce, mozzarella cheese, and then turkey pepperoni slices in a bag. And then of course they get some breakfast items, some fresh fruits and vegetables, and their milk to go with that. And they could have a little pizza party each in their own homes. And it was a great way to be inclusive of families. And I know the ECAP staff did a great job. They had to deliver to a couple of their families, but that made it inclusive for all of their families to be able to participate with a shared meal together apart. And then we've partnered with a couple schools to pass out their deliveries and their distribution bonus items, or take the opportunity to connect with families and distribute our grab and go flyers or different outreach. So Cedar Valley does pickup distribution twice a month. And so we started supporting that this month, and we connected with an additional 200 families over at Cedar Valley. And Cedar Valley is our 70% free or reduced school. So we are always looking for more ways to reach families. And so since they were coming to pick up their distribution, it was a great way to nourish those kiddos. And then, yeah, AACC is doing it at their distribution. They're doing the meal kits, and then they're going to be the pizza kits, so they can do a pizza party together. Back in October, we also had the opportunity to take the food truck to a community event at Madrona. So it was a fall event. So you can see the food truck is decorated there for the fall event. But just, we've had some great opportunities. And I like to say that though this has been a challenging year, and this is not how we ever thought school meal service would look, we've had opportunities to connect with our families, get to know the parents of our kiddos in a really neat way. Go to the next slide. So it feels like it was last week, but I guess it's already been 2 weeks since Thanksgiving break. We were able to provide holiday meal kits for Thanksgiving. So they had mashed potatoes in them. We made 1,500 cobblers, and we started with 900 pies, and I had to go run and buy more pies at every local Fred Meyer Thanksgiving week. So we ended up with another 1,500 pies that we've purchased to fill in these meal kits. So it was a great turnout. And so each family was able to get a holiday meal kit. And then we used a Fran's specialty bread in there just to make it something nice for breakfast. And then we are also, the other big news is that please spread the word that we are serving meals over winter break. I'm not making my staff come. There was enough volunteers to open 4 school sites. So we will have 4 school sites opened. Meadowdale Middle will be at 9 a.m. Mount Lake Terrace will be at 10 a.m. Linwood High will be open 11:45 to 12:45, and Edmonds Woodway High will be 4:30 to 5:30. And we spread out those times to try to make it available because we know we have parents who are on different schedules or working, or transportation availability. And then we're also going to deliver to 7 community sites. And we picked our 7 community sites as some of our larger sites and tried to geographically make sure we are spread out and servicing different areas of our district because we do have a large district. Those are, and the home deliveries, like I said, will still happen over winter break because of the staff that have volunteered. So those are the highlights going on in food service. And you know I am long-winded, so I could keep talking, but I just want to say thank you for your support. Food service doesn't run alone, and we realized this in March that my trucks stay on the road because I have wonderful mechanics in transportation who keep them on the road. Our fridge and freezers are up because the maintenance staff has been working so hard to keep our fridge and freezers up, and trust me, we keep those guys full, and so we want our fridge and freezers to always stay up. And then also our custodial team has been a huge behind the scenes supporter of us, literally holding the tent down on some of these rainy, windy days as we're serving out curbside. So I just appreciate everyone's support. And if you have other ideas on how we can connect to more kids, I'm always open to hearing that. Any questions I can answer for you?
Megan, this is the best report ever. Thank you. Just so heartwarming, and the work you're doing and your volunteers and the staff who are going to volunteer over break is just the best report ever. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I will relay that to my team.
And it looks like Megan wants me to incorporate into my financial discussion, but I'm going to let her have it. The donation that we received.
Thank you, Lydia, for reminding me. First Interstate Bake, which is in Linwood, donated $8,000 to clear off the negative balances that were left on kids' accounts on March 16th when they went home. So those balances as of last Friday have all been cleared. So when we get kids back in school, everyone will be starting with a clean slate next fall because meals are free for all of this year through August.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and rallying your team. And as Nancy said, this is just the most wonderful activity that we have in our community, and not just our school community, but beyond. I had a couple of thoughts as I've been thinking about this, and just sort of generally for the to throw out into the larger discussion. It seems to me that this is having free breakfast and lunch for all students is a really effective way to ensure that all families are nourished. And I wonder if it's something, of course, this is not a question for you, Megan, or for anyone here, but I wonder if it's something that we couldn't take what we've learned here and advocate to our federal government to continue this program, frankly, forever. And the second thought I had was the success that you've had in this program. This is the kind of success that we can have when we're well funded. And so I would just sort of note to the community that when schools get their funding, they can do really amazing things. And so that's it.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for just a pretty incredible program. And for me, I think one of the most amazing things is you're providing all these meals and some incredible treats with turkey and pies and cobblers, and doing all this and still meeting federal requirements and staying within the federal budget that you're given. I think it's a Herculean task, and I have no idea how you managed to do it, but I'm so thankful, and it's really wonderful. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Anything else? Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our budget and finance report for October. Take it away.
So I believe that the next time that we invite Megan to speak, we're going to have her speak after my report because I'm not nearly as interesting. And I'm going to keep it short tonight because I did a lot of talking 2 weeks ago when we looked at September as well as the entire year for 1920. So I will go quickly, but please ask questions anytime. So Sherelle, I'm going to have you skip a page and go to that one. So this particular page shows where we're at year to date. So as of October 31st, and compares it to where we were at year to date last October 31st. Couple things I want to point out. Property taxes, we're in good shape. We are just a little bit ahead of where we were a year ago. Local support non-tax, because school is not in session, and a lot of that is like student fees for things, then we're obviously not collecting. And a lot of those fees are paid up front at the beginning of the school year. So that is why you see such a large disparity this year last year. On state general purpose and state special purpose, right now through December 31st, they are funding us on our budget. Unfortunately, in January, as I mentioned last month, they will start funding us on our actual annual average full-time equivalency of our students. So we will drop after the January apportionments received. So November and December, the next two reports, you'll still see us being funded based on our budget. And then when we get to January, unfortunately, it will drop. And I'll talk a little bit about that in another slide. We have a placeholder, before I jump ahead, federal special purpose. One of the reasons, well, the big reason that we're ahead on collections as a percentage is because we have started claiming for CARES Act funding. So you'll see not exactly 1/12 each month, but roughly 1/12 of the 2.3 million will be collected between September 1 and August 31st. The grant allows us, we could use it in 21-22, but we're expecting that it will be consumed by the end of this current fiscal year. There is a placeholder of $2 million that says other school districts. That is normally for our deaf and hard of hearing program, that when districts send their students to our fine program, but since the program just started, that's why you're not seeing any revenues. And I would have to consult with Dana to determine how many of our out of district students are also attending. I just want to point out on salaries for certificated employees, it looks like we're a little bit above where we were last year. When we did receive the CARES Act funding, grant application was after the budget was adopted. So we didn't put any of the CARES Act money into any salaries or benefits because we still didn't have the grant application to really understand how we could spend it. So it was all put into kind of a materials placeholder. And then since we filled out the grant application, we did shift some of the CARES funding to certificated and classified staff in certain categories. So not too much worry that it's a little bit ahead of where it was last year. And then classified employees, as you know, we've had significant reductions in most areas, particularly transportation, some in food service, and certainly classified support throughout the schools. So that is why it is below percentage as it was a year ago. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead.
Lydia, just a minute before you skip ahead.
No skipping, okay.
Yeah, what about the capital outlay? Can you explain that one? 6.91%, and then you got 56.59%. Can you just explain that one?
So, and that actually looks odd because.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it's on this particular slide, my apologies. It's 55,000 has been spent as of October 31st. And 42,000 had been spent the previous year. So the previous year is a percentage of what was totally spent for 1920 versus this year is a percentage of the budget. So I did say that incorrectly. Prior year to date was 42,000 and total year to date was 617,000. Right now we're at 55,000 on a budget of 97,000. And the largest item in capital outlay is our Kyocera copiers that are on a replacement cycle. So we've tried to lengthen the replacement cycle a little bit in this pandemic, but there are certain Kyoceras that they're operating so inefficiently, they're actually costing us more money than to lease a new Kyocera that has a lower per copy pay. So ultimately, by getting a new copier, we can save money because it's not it's operating more efficiently. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So Terrell, I'm going to have you skip ahead all the way to the line graph. Thank you. And Sherelle and I don't practice this, and I so appreciate him because he's reading my mind. So the dark blue line again is where we where we started in August, 29,365,000. September and October are actual figures. And then November through the end of the year, August, are projections. Currently, we're projecting about a $9 million decrease. And that is predominantly, well, for two reasons. One, our original 2021 pre-pandemic budget showed a drawdown of $3.9 million. Fortunately, in this beginning balance of 29 million, we had $4 million over the 4% minimum that the board sets. So that is going towards this pandemic year when the enrollment shortfall. So at the moment, between general ed students, special education students, EL students, and high cap students, and transportation ridership, we're expecting quite a substantial decrease in state funding. Some of that has been made up in various ways, and some of it yet we are still working on. So early projection is that instead of 4%, we're coming in 3% or slightly below, and continuing to look at ways to mitigate the decrease. And then we could go back to Megan's report, which is much happier. But this is why we have a fund balance, is to weather the unforeseen storms. And no one could have ever imagined this pandemic. And this makes the Great Recession look fairly simple in contrast. So it's good that we had a healthy year last year. It's helping us through this year without making terribly additional cuts so far.
And Lydia, is this something, I mean, we can't depend on anything, but is this something that would be directly mitigated by any stimulus funds that might come our way if the feds actually pass something?
Yes, it would. If the feds pass something new, it would definitely help. Yes. Always hopeful for new stimulus types funding coming this way.
I just know that education has certainly been part of that discussion when they've talked about another assistance package. So
yes, that would help.
You know, one thing we talked about last year or 2 years ago when we had the levy cliff, that, you know, we were an 18% district and most of the districts around us were 24% districts. Now they're hitting the cuts because they got to get down to 18. Have you heard from Everett or Mukilteo that are now having to survive their student population loss plus the loss of local levy authority? And how are they mitigating it?
I haven't talked to Mukilteo. I have talked to Everett. He is penciling out what 21-22 is going to look like, and it's a very hard hit. They've been expecting it, but it's definitely harder to be in that situation than remaining at 18%, even though we wish we would have been at 24%. At least we don't have to deal with the loss of state revenues by getting back to 18. So it's tough. Okay, one more slide, please. So this was a very happy chart last year, and unfortunately, it's going the wrong direction. So historically, September is lower than October because of Labor Day. But this year, because students had multiple days that they could attend school before they may have made a decision to discontinue with school at Edmonds, our September count's actually higher. So October goes down between 80 and 90 students. November will decrease about 40 more students. And then early indications on December is that it's flattening out. So I am hoping that we will hold that in January and beyond. So this is the reason, this is the bulk of the reason why we expect to go from 29 million to say 20 million, is that, you know, we're probably still between 550 and 600 below budget just in general education. Special education students are also below budget, but they are slowly starting to increase and may mitigate some of that. So November, again, when I see you at the end of January, we'll talk about November, but I shall have some early indications, hopefully have some early indications from the legislative session that starts on, I believe, January 11th, on if there's any strategies to help offset any of the enrollment decline, any of the transportation shortfall. Hope to bring you some better news. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Any other questions or comments from the board before we move on? Okay, thanks so much. Next, we have a discussion about a potential kindergarten hub. Take it away.
So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Helen, Ed, and Lydia. But do want to thank all the folks that provided public comment regarding this topic. And again, as stated earlier, this is something that is, to my knowledge, not something that's new, but it's been talked about before as a possibility to offset the increased enrollment that we have at the elementary level and the elementary capacity in general. And again, there will be a process, but I wanted to make sure that, again, we have a newer administration coming to you presently in here in Edmonds. Want to make sure that we get in front of the board first and have a discussion with the board regarding the problem that we're trying to solve, which is really enrollment concern, over enrollment concerns, and at 2 schools, specifically Westgate and Sherwood, and in our efforts to try to again find solutions to the problem that we do have. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Young and Ed and Lydia.
Thank you, Dr. Balderas. So just to recap, Lydia is going to go over some of the conversations that have been happening since last year. And so, like Dr. Balderas said, this is not new conversation. However, I just want to reassure our board and our stakeholders that we have not engaged in any kind of planning or committees or any kind of engagement. This is just kind of a session for you to understand where the conversation came from. And so we can have the green light to proceed with some of the feasible options that Lydia is going to go over. And when we talk about the process and the engagement, what we mean is that we're not just going to have dates on a calendar to share out what we've been planning. We're really going to be planning alongside of our teachers as well as our parents and our school staff. And so what that means, listening. You know, the first step that we're going to take is listening to our stakeholders, and with that listening, using the data that we collect to inform our next steps. And none of that has started. And so I just really want to make sure that that's super clear, because I've heard the public comments and I hear the anxiety and I understand where people are coming from. I empathize with them because this is a huge deal. This is not ideal. It's like asking a family to move out of a certain family unit that they belong to, and it's personal. So we understand that, and there has not been any extensive planning. I started on July 1 in this role, and I can tell you that I've not engaged in any substantial planning of any kind. And so I just really want to reassure our families and our teachers and other school staff that I'm exactly where you are. And that's a good place to be, because we're going to do this together. So I'm going to hand it over to Lydia.
So I'll go over a little bit of history. And fortunately, I have Ed here in case I missed something, because I started in 2019 and this process really started in 2018 and before. So in 2018, we contracted with a demographer to do an enrollment review of the entire district, and determined that our elementary schools over the entire district are sitting at about 100%, 107% of their built capacity. So district-wide, we are overcrowded. Now, of course, that means, for instance, Westgate happens to be at about 115% of capacity, and Edmonds L is a little bit, is in the 90s. But on average, most of our elementary schools are over capacity. So that became part of the bond and facility committee work, was what did the bond committee want to focus on? And we focused on 3 buckets: enrollment mitigation strategy, preserving our fixed assets, which is like building maintenance and repair. And then, so enrollment capacity, building and repair, and I'm looking to Ed because I'm missing the 3rd bucket already.
replacing outdated schools.
Thank you. Okay, so not just fixing, but we have over 50% of our buildings are more than 50 years old. So during that process, we evaluated, there was an interest by the committee, by the administration, and I believe by the school board to look into changing the middle school model from 7th and 8th grade to 6th, 7th, and 8th. And that was one of our mitigation strategies for elementary schools, is that eventually the 6th grades would move on to middle school. That was dependent on the bond, because moving 6th graders out depended on being able to open up a 5th middle school. And even if the bond was successful, we knew that it would take a lot of time to reorganize our middle schools from 7-8 to 6-7-8. So that brings us back to Sherwood and Westgate. So we knew, even if the bond was successful, the summer before last, that we needed strategies to help Sherwood and Westgate, because they have already done all the mitigating strategies that they can come up with. I know both of them are on this call. I have worked with Sherwood to replace their cafeteria gym space, to replace this movable wall that was falling apart, just so that they can serve meals and have PE going on at the same time. And the kids who get their meals have to go back to the classroom and eat, because there's no space to have lunch at Sherwood. So we knew, even if the bond passed, that we had to mitigate Sherwood and Westgate, because they've been asking for a while. They have been in an overcrowded situation for a while, and we knew that even if the bond passed, it would be several years before we could address that. So even before the bond was placed on the ballot, I started working with Dr. Zhang's predecessor on what the options are. And so initially we determined that in order to really alleviate their overcrowding, we needed to reduce at least about 80 students at each school to really make a dent. So the first thing we talked about was relocatables, also known as portables. So currently, Sherwood, if we asked the city of Edmonds to get a permit, and not sure it'd be granted, we might be able to put one, at best 2 relocatables in the back of Sherwood. But we would have to build a fire lane to provide fire access to the back of the building. So currently, relocatables, there has been quite purchases of relocatables all across this state and in other states, because enrollment is growing in many areas. So the soonest we could get a relocatable is the 22-23 school year. A relocatable is approximately $500,000 per relocatable, and each relocatable alleviates about 24 students. So we're not quite at our goal of about 80 students per classroom. Westgate, Westgate has a little bit different issue than the fire lane, which is currently they're kind of landlocked, out of space. If we put relocatables, if we were permitted to provide relocatables, we would have to displace parking. And there's insufficient parking now, and there's some traffic problems where they're located. So if the city of Edmonds even allowed us to put a relocatable on, we would have to do traffic mitigation and parking replacement. So we're also kind of like lacking you can add capacity, but you're not adding infrastructure. You're not adding a cafeteria. You're not adding additional restroom space. So sometimes just adding classrooms doesn't negate the whole problem. Even if you could add 80 students worth of classrooms, you still have those common spaces that you can't expand very easily without a complete renovation of the school. So we looked at rebounding, and again, since we're at about 100%, 107% capacity district wide, and because you can't transport, Sherwood and Westgate kids across, 10 miles across the district, the two closest schools, the only one that has any capacity is Edmonds Elementary. And we figured between the two schools that Edmonds could accommodate about 30 students. So it's a little bit better than one portable, but not a lot. All the other schools are also encountering some of their own problems. So that was our reboundary consideration. We did look at College Place Middle and 6th graders. Just want to remind us that College Place also houses our e-learning program, which I believe was displaced from the ESC many years ago because College Place Middle has much more appropriate classroom space than an admin building. So they currently use 4 classrooms, some office space, some other common spaces. So it could take some, it's a possibility. I'm not sure that they have adequate space to take on, 150 6th graders. So that is something that we could research. It's really difficult because you move any grade and it's going to affect people. And I just want to leave it with no solution is optimal by any means, but the overcrowding at those two schools is suboptimal. And it's really not good to have that much overcapacity. It really does take an impact on kids when you have to double up classrooms. I mentioned the cafeteria. Parking at Westgate, I know, is like a traffic jam every day. So there are things that it is suboptimal as well. So on to former Woodway. Woodway was last used as an elementary for Mount Lake Terrace Elementary when they were under remodel, and that was the 17-18 school year. One of our citizens was concerned that we would only have this as a one-year solution, and then that school, former Woodway, would be needed for another remodel. That is not the case. The completion of Spruce, if we are able to complete Spruce, those students would need to be moved to former Alderwood Middle School. And if someday we are able to replace Oak Heights, those students are also would be moved to former Alderwood Middle School. So we have no plans to use former Woodway for any remodels. In fact, since the bond didn't pass, we don't have any funding for major remodels. Another key about former Woodway is while it is not in the shape that we would need it to be by fall to house a large school, it requires very little to get it ready to be a small school. So it can easily house 200 students, but it would be quite a challenge to house a much larger school. There would be many more repairs and renovations that would need to happen. Ed, would you like to, do you have any thoughts on anything I've said, or?
The only other issue, and this is really not my area of expertise, but the other issue about moving the 6th graders is that we currently do not have a 6, 7, 8 curriculum. There's a whole educational program. And when we were planning the bond, we purposely put the middle school projects to the end of the bond so there would be time to develop a 6, 7, 8 middle school program and actually work out how that would work. So it isn't simply the matter of moving the students someplace. You need an educational program to go with them.
Yes, and so that's why our preference is kindergarten. Another reason is 6th graders, they may be going to middle school the following year, but the middle school currently is not designed to educate 6th graders as middle schoolers. So that's touching on what Ed is saying. And, you know, 6th graders still have recess, and it just would be, it would be quite a different model. So that again is kindergarten. We can make a kindergarten hub very exciting, very fun. At my last district, had the same problem, overcapacity at the elementary schools, and one particular elementary had to take on 3 schools, kindergartners. Again, it's not optimal, but every administrator would go to that school just to go hang out with 200 kindergartners because it was done so well, and it was such a fun place to be around excited 5-year-olds.
So there are alternatives in terms of, and we do have the 2 building leaders on this call as well, just to, and again, the building leaders aren't advocating one way or the other. They're just here to answer questions with regards to, you know, what it's like right now and what would happen if we would not do anything. Like what would happen? I see Christine, I also see, there's Mary, in terms of, I know Mary's newer to the, actually new to her building, but again, the ramifications if we don't do anything, and the principals can share, you know, their experiences in terms of their current condition if nothing would happen.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. This is Christy Kessler. I'm the principal at Sherwood Elementary. I think right now the thing that is important to know about Sherwood is that all of our programs are sharing space. So we've got 2 grade levels in general education that are sharing classrooms. So we have 3 teachers and 3 groups of kids sharing 2 classrooms. And all of our other programs are also sharing space as well. So including our special education programs and specialists, PE, and things like that. And we've come up with a lot of creative solutions about how to work with that, but it's also not something that is sustainable. I think in that long-term piece, particularly if we're continuing to, if our enrollment is continuing to increase. So I think just how we're providing education for kids is something that I'm concerned about as far as space. There are also just the physical limitations, like we've talked about before. Lydia talked about just like bathrooms and just how kids move around the school is something else that is affected. We just don't have the space, for band and orchestra. For band last year, I think we had 60 kids on our stage sharing the stage while PE was happening at the same time. So there's just, we've done a lot of sharing of space. And I think particularly thinking about COVID and the implications of that, a lot of the solutions that we've come up with have involved people sharing spaces, and I don't know how doable that is as we're going forward.
Before Mary jumps in, I'd just like also to mention that this is not a 1 year or 2 year. This problem is not going away. So our demographer is estimating that Christie's school will increase by another 80 students, and over the coming years. So we anticipate that enrollment will only increase at those 2 schools. So it's not something that can be fixed for 1 year and then the problem goes away. It will continue until we are able to change boundaries somehow, that some school is able to accept, or that the sixth graders move on to middle school.
So I'm Mary Freitas, the principal at Westgate, and this is my first year at Westgate. But as I came into the building, I heard a lot of stories about the parking. The parking is pretty legendary there, and the flow of traffic, the portables, and the location of the portables are kind of on the playground. And so there's been some accidents in the back with the playground, with people running into the portables as they're leaving the playground to get out on 220th. So it's backed up 220th and 96th through the amount of traffic that's there. It's just not meant to handle that. It's a small neighborhood school that's just not meant to handle that. The bathrooms, my understanding is there's usually a line in front of the bathrooms because there's just not enough adult or children bathrooms. Just like Christy said, we do share space. We don't share classrooms, which is really fortunate, but we share, like the library has band in the library, I believe. And there's some different places where we do share. The gym is not that large, and we were getting ready to have to eat lunch in the classrooms this year had COVID not come. But of course we aren't right now. But the gym also has more than one PE teacher. So the gym is already shared, and then childcare shares the gym, and then orchestra is on the stage in the gym. So the gym is like maxed out with more than one teacher, childcare, orchestra. So it's really maxed out. So we have a lot of the same problems that that Christy so well described. So that's what I wanted to let you know. Any questions?
Not really a question, but I was on the kind of the bond and the facilities committee and walked through all of the property, all the buildings in the district, including your two schools. And I vividly remember looking at the physical spaces and seeing how people and teachers and students were in hallways and put into little areas. Again, like the music, you've got a small stage and you've got how many kids on there? And because of the failure of the bond, we're now looking, our relief that we were hopeful for is now several years farther down the road. And while we don't know necessarily what the post-pandemic enrollment is going to be, we do know that there is going to be growth, especially if you look at the potential for people in the cities to move out to the suburbs because of the advent of more and more people doing remote working. You've got people moving out of urbans to suburban areas like ours. I mean, I'm in Briar and I can't believe the number of new people moving in, and you ask them where they're from and it's West Seattle, it's Seattle. It's so we don't actually know necessarily what the post-pandemic enrollment picture is going to look like, but my feeling is that we are going to continue to see growth that relief has now been postponed about. And so whether we look at a kindergarten hub, whether we look at moving sixth graders, we're going to have to disturb somebody. We cannot allow a Westgate to come up to 124% capacity. That's just not a doable situation for that particular school. So this discussion has to begin, and it's beginning around a discussion of one alternative. But as we look at that alternative and we start moving into other potential things that might be able to happen. You get the information and you figure out whether that's doable or not. You look at the advantages and the disadvantages of each of the different scenarios, and then you come up, unfortunately, with what is the least disruptive. But it's going to involve disruption. There's no way to avoid it, because if you don't do anything, the disruption to those two schools is going to be so significant that you are going to have hundreds and hundreds of kids and staff being disrupted on a daily basis if you don't do anything.
So I don't have to be convinced about the need for alleviating the enrollment problems at these two schools. And I'm new to this because when I came in, all of this work was done. And I really think the work that's been done has been phenomenal in patient and thinking through options. And the work toward the bond was really well done. It's unfortunate the bond hadn't passed. I have to admit that I lean toward wanting the district to look more seriously at the idea of the sixth graders, either going into their own hub or going over to College Place Middle and maybe putting e-learning over at Old Wood Way. And my thinking is this: Ed mentioned that there's no 6th to 8th grade curriculum program. However, we need to acknowledge 6th grade standards go with 7th and 8th grade standards. It's been a problem at the elementaries for years with the Common Core standards, and even I think the standards before that 6th grade kids and teachers were housed with K-5, but their curriculum, their standards align with the middle school standards. And there would be a lot of movement where the 6th grade teachers would want to go meet with middle school teachers to try to get their program aligned. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to begin working toward putting together a curriculum program that matches the standards appropriately to be at middle school. Being an early childhood person, a person who's passionate about early childhood, I get the concerns of our public about having the kindergartners spending their first year in a separate place. And I understand it can be done in an exciting way and in a good way. But I think in terms of when you're thinking about transitions, it would be far easier for the older students to transition into a different model that's going to put them into a middle school model, rather than trying to have the kindergartners spend 1 year in a building and then move into the regular elementary school. So while I absolutely agree that we have to do something to alleviate the problems at these two schools, I would really like us to think as seriously about the 6th grade option as what seems to be in terms of, as well as the kindergarten option.
Nancy, you make some really good points, and I just did want to add a little piece of history that we had discussed back when we were doing all this, thinking about making our middle school 6 to 8, that College Place would be our pilot for that potentially. Greg, maybe you want to add some detail to that. Is that something that we could, thoughtfully ramp up in, this amount of time?
Well, and we did do some of that legwork already, and there are a lot of, not to say that there isn't still a lot of work to be done, but we did some initial exploration of that idea way back when we were considering the 6-8 middle school model and treating College Place Middle School as almost like a pilot, if you will. Not necessarily a pilot, because I think we were committed to heading that direction, but pilot's probably the best description. But yeah, I think we can certainly ramp that work back up again. A lot of the work has been done, so I think we know what we need to do to get ready. It's just a matter of then mobilizing the work and moving forward. So if that's the direction we decide to go, then I think we've done a lot of the legwork already.
I have one other sort of related point that this seems like a really significant problem. I mean, well, it is, and that is not going to be alleviated by even the 6th grade, not for the long term. You know, we can start the college place pilot or learning. I don't know what you call it, but it won't solve our problems the way a bond will, of course. But if we don't have a bond, do we want to look at reopening Woodway as a full, you know, K-5 school?
I think we would need to circle back with staff and again, and getting the history for me and understanding where are the pressure points across the system. As has been stated, there's pressure points at all elementary schools for the most part, and will be continued to do so. I think it's just trying to find the most feasible manner to really provide support for our kids. Truly, I go back to, it's always about the kids and the support for the kiddos in terms of their best educational experience that we can provide for them across our entire system. So I would need to circle back. I know we have a long range facilities plans. We have a lot of, we've done a ton of work. It's just kind of regrouping that work and bringing it back to the board for consideration in a more complete package. So I would need to circle back with staff and come back because I know there's been, again, tremendous amount of work already done.
I'm not suggesting we do any of these things. I'm just suggesting that our solutions have to be big because we have a big problem that may not be solved by a bond if we don't, you know, we're going out for a capital levy, but we may not get a really good bond for a few years. And meanwhile, our elementary is, you know, overtaxed.
Yeah, no, and again, I really appreciate the conversation. And you're right. I think a bond long-term and long range in terms of what we can do and where we have capacity and look at all, at the end of the day, it becomes a numbers game. It becomes a math problem. We have X amount of kids and X amount of classrooms. So it's just where are the classroom spaces? I think that's maybe a study session for the future. I know we've done it already. I'm sure we have in the past in terms of looking at capacity and where there are some slots that are open and where and what's doable. And it could range by region as well. So again, I need to get more fully vetted into the system in terms of understanding and really depend on the professionals that are driving this and looking at ed and others that have been here for a long time that can share the history. So tonight, again, I know that Dr. Young had talked about this, is we would have a broader understanding when we reach out to community and look at all the possibilities and come back to the board here again next month again, we communicate with our communities and reach out with our staff to get an understanding of the problem again and review all possible options and look toward a direction for the out year. Because again, I think as the board understands, something needs to be done. And just what is that thing? What is that one thing that we will do? And knowing full well that the longer term solution is again a bond, but more construction and a true change to a middle level model that I know that Greg's worked on in the years past under the direction of the board. That's something that's the best practice. But right now, we're just trying to mitigate what we have right now. Any other questions from the board at all? Okay, staff, any other final?
I just have one thing to add about the solution. I mean, there could be a number of solutions, but I think what we need to focus on is which one do we use first? Because I think change will have to happen over time. There's not one thing that's going to resolve all of our issues. So when we introduce one, we mitigate from one factor over time. And that's kind of where we're at right now with the options and what we focus on and what we kind of spend more of our time on. We can't spend time equally on 5 different ideas. We've got to look at the feasibility. We've got to look at how it's going to be mitigated. We've got to look at the process and create some timelines that make sense for our stakeholders and start engaging that way. So my recommendation would be that we focus on one of the things that we've already talked about. Pick one that has high feasibility, engage the community, listen to them, gather data. What are they worried about? What are they excited about? All of those things, and then proceed to get more solidified next steps.
I'm like Nancy. I'm interested in actually, if possible, looking at two scenarios: the kindergarten hub and also the potential of moving the sixth graders early over to College Place Middle, because that is something that was talked about as a pilot program. It was looked at, and so I understand maybe the need to do one, but I'm wondering if there can't be parallel tracks of looking at what the ramifications would be, because we did talk about having sixth graders at College Place Middle as a pilot program, and talked about the need initially to have them in a little bit different teaching model, because as elementary kids, they weren't really ready per se to go to a middle school model quite yet. So I wonder, and I'm not, no, I don't know. I'm just one person on the board, but I would like to see, I'd like to see, okay, what are the pros and cons of those two options, because they would be something that would be within a budget that we don't have to, for example, try to get the entire Woodway Elementary up and running, which we don't have the money for, unfortunately. And so if we could at least look at two options that are financially feasible within what we have, that would look at, unfortunately, it's disrupting the bookends of both of those schools. And I don't know if you need, I mean, Nancy's said she's interested. I don't know if you want to not do it unless there's three of us. I mean, I don't know how you want to proceed, but I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know how I feel about it.
Thank you for that.
I appreciate that, Director Marie. So for us, if we look at possibilities and come back to the board, I think we would look to assess what's feasible and what's not feasible, what's more doable, and come back with some recommendations, and again, come up back with our recommendation in the end. So I think we would pursue all avenues. And again, I think it's making sure we get the input and the understanding in terms of what's actually doable and what's not doable, and also timeline, because we're going to be in January here, blink of an eye, and before you know it, we're going to be moving forward. And I do worry about also kinder registration. That's something that's come up as well in terms of kindergarten registrations right around the corner, and making sure parents, if that's an option, make sure parents are aware that that's something that's on the table for their consideration as well. So again, just full transparency for the community is really critical.
One thing I'd like to add is, if there are two viable options, but we only take one out to the community, people tend to feel like they're not really being given a choice, like the decision's already sort of been pre-made. And I worry about, and I understand, Dr. Jung, your interest in, it's to pick one and spend all that work doing it. But I think in terms of a preliminary, getting the feel from the community and the input and knowing what the pros and cons are, I think for district staff to make that decision to go with one to take out to the community, what if the community hates it? Then we haven't done the work for the other. And so I kind of feel like people always like to have options to say, I like this over that, instead of I just hate this and what am I going to do?
Agree. I completely agree with you, Dr. Kadams. The pros and cons have to align with feasibility. And I think as we gather more information, we can definitely do what you're suggesting. And like Dr. Balderas says all the time, with everything that we do, we've got to be transparent. It's just not just this, it's always that. We get that narrative all the time. So we've got to be transparent. And I think our stakeholders will understand the why when we present the feasibility. And I'm also curious about that other options as well. So thank you for your support.
Other questions, comments? Thank you so much for the work that you've done and for bringing this to the board. It is an important part of the process that I think our community was worried that it was a done deal because it came to the board, but really the board should be involved in the early stages, not at the last minute. And so we really appreciate that you've brought it to us and started the public conversation tonight. And we look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you. I appreciate Christy and Mary for being here tonight. And just again, at the end of the day, as a former elementary principal myself, I just want a solution to help me because I know it's impacting my staff and my kids. So I know where they're at. And again, they're not married to any solution. They just want a solution. And we'll work together to that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have new business, and we have one item, a single reading to approve completed public works contract number Q19-10CP for the 2020 portables project. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the completed public works contract.
Second, this is Karen.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the completed public works contract. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Director Kadams?
Aye.
Director McMurray?
Aye.
Director Chase?
Aye.
Director Noble?
Aye.
Director Kilgore?
Aye. And the motion passes. Next, we have board member comments. And I have to, in my head, if you could put us back in the gallery view so I can see everybody. So I have to reshuffle the seats now that we have new leadership. Director McMurray, would you like to make a comment? Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I forgot our students because you have your cameras off mostly. So Kai, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the meals, and I don't think people really realize how many over 1 million meals actually is, and that's just absolutely incredible. So I want to thank everybody who's part of that.
Thank you. Vandana?
Yeah, also to reiterate what Kai said, I also agree that the meals is completely phenomenal and remarkable, the amount of work that's been done for that, especially during these tough times. I know it's hard to communicate with students and their families and actually get the meals to them. So I think it's a really great thing that the district is doing.
Thank you. Sorelia?
I just wanted to thank the board overall for trying to accommodate for the students and being so understanding during these hard times. And I'm very, I just enjoyed the presentations and all and learning about how our district works.
Thank you for contributing. Ritika?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I meant to comment on this before, but I kind of forgot. I just wanted to thank Director Chase. I got a chance to attend one of the strategic advocacy things, and that was an engaging process to kind of see how some of that stuff was coming, the conversations that came from that. And then to the meals piece, I mean, it's incredible. I had a chance to work with Megan this summer, over the summer, kind of to put together a story when they had just kind of started that, and I thought it was incredible then, but to hear they've definitely gone above and beyond, and I especially appreciate that it's available to everyone, because the free and reduced meals or the free and reduced process and how that reaches students drives me absolutely insane, with how it doesn't encompass the whole entire community. And then finally, kind of to reiterate some of what my other fellow student advisors are saying, there's a huge appreciation for, the board and the district comments that have gone out in the last couple of weeks, just kind of trying to help lessen the load and kind of to help students as we go through this remote learning process, because it's definitely not been easy. And then the VI programs and the hearing impaired programs, I've heard great things about that too. So.
Great. Thank you. Isabel.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. And yeah, the meals that are being offered are just incredible. And I know that it's helping many students. And also I want to comment on what Dr. Banderas said about like maybe connecting with peers through pods. If we can do that before entering school through like clubs or sports. And I think that'd really help, especially like new students, because I'm new to this district. So sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my connection's a little unstable. But yeah, I'm new to this district, so I don't really know as many people, especially being like a high schooler and being kind of caught up with like academics. I haven't really like tried to meet anyone, I guess. But I can't even imagine for kids that are new to the country, because they probably don't know how to like join clubs, which I have joined, so it had some social interaction. So for them, the pods I'm assuming they would help a lot with that social interaction.
Thank you. I think I've gotten all the students who are on the call. Director McMurray?
I'll make it quick, given the hour. Thank you to our student advisors for your input. Always very valuable. And I'm excited to hear that the eHub is gearing up, and that we're looking at the potential of opening up different sites. That's very, very exciting to me. And I just want to say thank you to First State Bank for that great donation to remove that debt off of the district and off of those families. It's a reminder that the community really does want to help, and when there's a specific way, they'll step forward. So just my appreciation for that.
Thank you. Director Noble?
Yeah, I'll be quick too. First, I really want to thank our student advisors for all their comments during the reentry program part. I really appreciate hearing how this whole situation is affecting you guys, and you're so honest about it. So thank you so much. And one more time, I'll thank Megan and the food service program. It's just totally incredible. It just blows my mind that it's even possible. So thank you so much, and I'll let somebody else comment.
Thank you. Director Chase.
Thank you, Director Kilgore. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve again as your legislative representative. It is quite a year going on. The next time that we meet, I believe, is January 12th. It'll be the day after the legislative session begins in Olympia. It's all going to be all remote, so we'll see how we're going to engage there. And I wanted to share also with our students that today's topic at the Rep WASA meeting was student engagement. I was unable to attend. However, we should get the recording, and I'll share it along with you so we can continue to talk about how we're going to engage. I also wanted to share that, as you know, the Edmonds School District encompasses 3 different legislative districts. And in the 21st legislative district, our education champion, Representative Ortiz Self, was elected the majority caucus chair very recently. So she is one of the education advocates champions, not only for Edmonds, but for the state. So the position that she now is in gives me great faith that education will be getting the attention it deserves. However, we must lower our expectations. We're all being told, as it is going to be a very lean year, not only for COVID, but for all sorts of budget implications. I do have to say too that I really appreciate the fall health newsletter that we all just got recently. This is an excellent newsletter. And I really appreciate everybody that got that out and all the wealth of information in there. And that's it. I just appreciate all the dedication and perseverance to help us manage what we know is our over enrollment problem that we've been talking about for years, and making sure that we keep the community engaged in all these conversations. So looking forward to a very pared down holiday season. And as I think it was Kai was saying, it fills my heart with joy to think that we're at least doing this community outreach with all the meals that are being delivered too, right? And the great efforts there. So that's it.
And Vice President Kadams.
Thank you, Director Kilgore. This is actually my 1-year anniversary of being a board member. And I want to do a very special shout out to my fellow board members, all of you, for helping me learn how to be a board member. You've been very supportive and you're a great team to work with. And I also thank you for your confidence in electing me to be vice president. I look forward to working under President Kilgore's tutelage. And I appreciate that you're, Dr. Kilgore, to continue taking on that responsibility as president, because it's a hard role. I also want to say that it warms my heart to see all of the work that our staff and our volunteers and partners are doing to help support our most vulnerable students and families through the meal services being done, through the Housing Hope Partnership, through the donations, and the time and effort that everybody's giving to try to help our most vulnerable survive these very difficult times. It makes me feel so good to be a part of this community. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you. And I will just say that I am still picking up meals for my son. And it's really a pleasure to do it. I get to see, they've become old friends, the people, well, some of them I already knew anyway, but the people who are paras at the local elementary school who help deliver the meals or hand them out are also part of that team. And it's so nice to see their friendly faces once a week. I would just say I attended my first meeting of the Northwest Interscholastic Activities Association executive board meeting this week. And it was me and all the athletic directors around the state or around the region, which is from Shoreline up to Canada. So at first I was a little bit intimidated, but they were all very helpful in explaining the kinds of things that they're doing and thinking about. And of course, we're all thinking about how are we going to do athletics, which are so important, as well as the other activities during this time. And so that is something that, I've spoken about many times because athletics and music have been so important to my kids and their high school and, well, actually entire school experience. So I am absolutely an advocate for the potential to bring some of the kids back in small pods safely to do certain kinds of physical activities, and so I look forward to hearing more about that as plans move forward. Otherwise, I have nothing further to say, which I'm sure everybody's happy about. I'll turn it over to Dr. Balderas.
Thank you. I'll be quick. Again, I just I stated earlier by staff, there is a concern regarding budget and the outlook in the future without any additional relief. That's something that will be continually discussed with the board and community as we move forward, not only just for next year, but for the out years as well. So there's a concern because we are short kids. And across the country, I was on a call recently. I think they mentioned there's 3 million kids that are not attending school right now that have not been found. So 3 million kids. That's across the United States. So, and Washington State's no different. So there's a great concern about what's happening right now with our students. In here, Washington State, but across the country. As also, I appreciate the conversation we had regarding the overcrowding concerns. And as you'll, I think you know by now, is a process is the product is as important as the product. The process is as important as the product. I learned that a long time ago. And I think what you'll find is that I will be very transparent. I apologize for any miscommunication that had occurred. I fully own that to the community. So, and again, ensure that we are fully transparent in anything we do, and we seek input from our community prior to making decisions, but also not before I get in front of the board. So so I think it's really important that the board is made aware early on about any process procedure before we move forward with community. I think that's point critical, just to get your initial take on it. So again, the last thing I ever want is have something at the very end come to you and make a decision at the very end without you not understanding what we're dealing with. So again, we'll come back and we'll process with community, we'll process with staff, and I appreciate the dialogue being had. And also, this is the last time I'll see this group before the winter break. I know it's not the winter break that we all wish we had, but I think for the kids and faculty that we have, it's a well-deserved break from the Zooms that we do every day, the Zoom meetings that we have every day. And I appreciate the board's support. So look forward to the work ahead. And I do wish you a restful holiday break. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we had our discussion earlier. Everyone have a great holiday, and meeting adjourned.
Good night, Allison.
Good night.